brings us into talking about our live room, which is our first live room of our 2 live rooms here at the studio. And this is the West live room. And so what I do is I tend to record drums in this room, and I tend to leave this door open for this room so that all the sound goes into this hallway. And that's why I have those hallway mics there and get this extra layer of decay and depth and reflection that's not happening inside of this room to be able to blend into the drum sound. So yeah, this is the live room. This is about a 25 by 30 room. One unique feature, one thing to mention, I guess, you can take another look at it by looking at the hallway here, but the hallway actually is not a straight wall, and that was done specifically because I wanted to create an angle and create a parallel wall for this room so that this live room is not a parallel surface room. So technically this wall is slanted and it is a parallel surface to this wall. This is the only parallel surface right here. And on the top of here, this is actually a slanted ceiling for a rain gutter there. So actually the whole floor is not parallel with the ceiling. So it really helps with the diffusion in this room. It's not very like boxy sounding, and it just sounds live and quick, and the decay just sounds bright and energetic, but it doesn't sound echoey and it doesn't sound fluttery. It's worth noting that this room was the design that you see all here, and all the treatment was designed by a guy named Jeff Hedbeck. I hired him, and I got all the plans and built everything as best as I could, but I did it very DIY. So he kind of has a pretty cool style in terms of that he likes to have a lot of absorption with diffusion on top of that, and that allows for things to be more reflective but controlled, so we're not really killing the ambience and the natural decay of the room, but we're actually just controlling all the frequencies of it. So his designs tend to have a lot of absorption and then one live wall. So there's one wall that is traditionally untreated in most of his designs. So this is our live wall here, and this allows all the sound to just hit this naturally and bounce off and be diffused and reflected, and it just makes everything sound really awesome. So, I mean, obviously the first thing to talk about is the Drumbrella. The Drumbrella is a straight ripoff of Eric Valentine's Drumbrella, which he claimed was a straight ripoff of the Ocean Way Drumbrella, which Ocean Way, RIP, you apparently are not a studio anymore, and that is upsetting. Also, Eric Valentine's Drumbrella isn't a thing anymore, so 2 less Drumbrellas in the room, but I am carrying on the tradition of the Drumbrella by having a Drumbrella in my room. Lots to talk about with this. Very funny story in terms of how when we built it, it was actually built outside in our garage, and then I had a realization that I think it wasn't going to fit into the door, and it didn't fit in the door, so we had to take one apart and get it together. But anyways, the Drumbrella is in this room. This room's ceiling is about 14 feet tall. Starts 14 on that end, ends at 12 here, so it's about 13 in the middle. So yeah, this is hoisted up above, and a lot of people think that this sound would be more dramatic with the raising and the lowering of it, but really the best way to explain it is that if I'm playing a snare drum and it sounds and it responds great, and I tune it up a little bit more, my bottom end and my response with the room is going to change. And if I change and alter the height of the Drumbrella, I will be able to retain that low end that I had before tuning it up by actively changing the tuning of the room to accommodate with the tuning of the drums. So the way that I kind of tend to work on it is I'll set it at a drum set, I'll hit around some toms and some kick and snares and get it to a point where I'm playing with the level, and they'll just eventually sit and balance out, and sounds like the decay is really natural. So I'll play with that and kind of try to demonstrate that in a minute. But yeah, so a couple facts about the treatment. This is all 703 panels inside of the walls here. All the walls are, double thick walls, like totally soundproof. The whole unit is in a industrial space where I'm just allowed to be as loud as I want, however long I want. This is all 703, except for these 2 big bass traps in the back. Those are just filled with Ultra Touch, which is recycled blue jeans. So it's just a bunch of recycled blue jeans just sitting inside of those panels there. Talk about some drums. Let's just go around the room here. These are kick drums from my PDP Concept Maple kit. I am a firm believer in tuning drums to the keys of songs. And so I bought every iteration of this drum set so that I could have every possible size to accommodate for any tuning that I want. So this is an 18-inch kick drum. This is a 22-inch kick drum. This is a 24-inch kick drum. And this is a 26-inch kick drum. I'm a very big fan of the PDP drum sets. If for those who don't know, PDP is essentially the parent, or I'm sorry, the daughter or child of DW drums. So it's essentially DW drums, just made in a cheaper way and manufactured much cheaper. All the components are great. All the shells sound great. I love them. And pretty much anytime a drummer comes to my studio, my drum kit usually sounds better than theirs. So most people don't even really bring their drums anymore. So yeah, then it moves on to toms, which I guess we can finish off talking about this. So currently I got a 13 up there and I got a 16 on the floor tom, but I also have an additional 12-inch, a 14-inch, and an 18. So again, if we go through all the drum sizes, we got 18, 22, 24, 26 kick. Then we've got 12, 13, 14, 16, 18 toms. So yeah, any tuning, any song, any style, these drums are pretty much my go-to. These are the sounds that I really like to use. This is the typical drum placement that we do. We set it up right here underneath the Drumbrella. I have a huge assortment of cymbals and heads, etc. I guess it's important to finish off over here. So I have usually I always have another pair of hi-hats set up because I like to switch hi-hats between songs, sometimes even parts of songs. So I always have a second pair ready to go. I'll make a drummer choose his two favorite hi-hats. So we have a reserve hi-hat over here and then our main hi-hat that we're ended up using. Then I got all the old drum heads that we've changed through. All these drum heads are like phenomenal. Like they haven't really been used that often. So if anyone wants to change into like a clear head instead of a coated head, or someone breaks a head, then we can quickly swap between that. We got a bunch of drum heads ready to go. Then we got our cymbals, big cymbal collection here. So I have all of my low volume Zildjians. That way anyone who's practicing or jamming and doesn't want to like play on all the expensive cymbals, they can just, jam on these guys and learn their parts or whatever, Then I have all my hi-hats over here. I have so many pairs of hi-hats. I fucking love hi-hats. Really, really, really particular about hi-hat sounds for parts. Like I said earlier, I even change hi-hats in the middle of songs. Depending on I really like the open sound of this hi-hat, but I really like the closed sound of this one, et cetera, et cetera. So I got, a pair of 14-inch fat hats. These were actually the prototype that they had sent me initially. I have a Zildjian deal. Shout out to Eric. He's just a really great guy, and Zildjian is just absolutely the best cymbal company. So to be able to have Zildjian cymbals at my studio for drummers to just come in and be able to choose between is just like the most phenomenal thing ever. So yeah, so these are the fat hats. I got a pair of 14-inch quick beats. These were my first hi-hat pair that I ever bought. I used to use these a lot. I really like them. They sound great. Then we have these other fun prototypes. These are actually I think these are called the trash or the trap hats. But they're just like these terrible sounding hi-hats that are just like really fun to play with. I remember I had one guy come here to do a rehearsal session, and I had left these up, and I felt bad. I was like, oh Jesus, I left those really shitty hi-hats up there. And then I walked in the room and he was playing them, and I was like, sorry, I left those hi-hats on there. I have some other ones that you could try. And he was like, oh no, I'm gonna buy a pair of these. These are my favorite now. So yeah, these are really fun. Then I got a pair of 15-inch fat hats I just got the other day. Really like these 15 inches. So I got 14 inches and I got 15 inches. And then I also have a pair of 15-inch, I think it's what is it? The K Lights. So these ones over here, these are some of my other favorites. These are my 14-inch hybrid hats. Shout out to George Daniel from the 1975. That's why I got these. I really like them. They sound phenomenal. These are like my most used hi-hat here. These are my 16-inch lights, K lights. Oddly, the 16 inches are just like nice and quiet and they just sound really good and really sloshy. Pretty much my go-to hi-hat, 16s. So then we move on to our crashes. I like a 19-inch crash as my left crash, and I like a 20-inch crash as my right crash. I really like the K Darks. I'm a big K Dark fan because I could boost a lot of top end and I can just boost my cymbals and they just sound phenomenal. Like cymbals are a really hard thing. Like, I mean, I used to record so many shitty bands and I would just like, they would just have like Sabian B8s and all these terrible cymbals, you know, Wuhan or whatever. And it just, you're at the mercy of this guy's cymbal that he's going to be bashing around 90% of the time. And it's just in every single mic and it just sucks. So to be able to have like these Ks as these just cymbals that just like, they're not too bright sounding. You can just hit them so hard. They just sound glorious. And you can just ride them so hard in the mix. So I got 19 and 20-inch Ks. I have 19 and 20-inch A customs, which are like everyone's favorite like cymbal, phenomenal sounding cymbal. I have those next door, so we'll see those when we go into the other live room. On here, I got my 23-inch Sweet Ride. Big fan of the 23-inch Sweet Ride. It's kind of like my go-to. I've got a 21 as well that I have next door that we'll see. That's like the Travis Barker one that everyone really loves. But then I also have a Mega Bell here, which is what we use for all the spirit world. You got to have your Mega Bell. Phenomenal, phenomenal cymbal for the bell. And then I have a 24-inch K Light that I really like as well too. Don't break this out too much, but when you have those certain ride parts, this is just a phenomenal ride to have. And so yeah, then the last cymbal that I always really like to have set up is I always like to have one effect crash set up. So I have the Crash Doom on here. Great alternative. It's not a China, it's not a crash, it's not a ride. It just sounds really good. So this is pretty much my go-to usually. But I really like to switch all the effect crashes that I have in between songs too. So I have like 2 racks here full of effect crashes. You got your classic China. I have a custom hybrid Trash Smash. It's a really good cymbal. This is like a Trey Cool thing from Green Day. Then I also have the Cluster Crash. This sounds phenomenal. This is a newer one that I got recently. Really great cymbal. Also, the one and only splash that I have. Someone left this here, so it's my splash. Whoever this is. It's been well over the 30-day policy, so it's mine now. But yeah, so that's just sitting here in case anyone wants to use a splash. I got one of these 17 inches. Zeldin accidentally sent me a 17-inch instead of a 19-inch, so I got a free 17-inch here. Here it is. Thank you, Zeldin. And then a 18-inch EFX. And then this is the Mega Bell of Doom. So it's basically a Mega Bell and a Crash of Doom put together. It's like a prototype crash. It rocks. It's super cool. I think Spirit World actually uses this as their bell that they use live. So those are all my cymbals. Then we go over to my little cubby over here where I've got all my basic drum keys and everything that I would need to attack a drum set. Got my drum bot, my tune bot, so that I can make sure my tuning's good to go. I've been using this a lot more often. I like it a lot. Then I got rock locks where, you know, shout out to Anthony Gazelle. Rock locks are a life-changing device. You put these around your lug locks. They're around every single lug here on this drum set. And this is how you keep your drums in tune. So once I tune a drum set, I lock it down with lug locks and they'll never go out of tune. Shout out to rock locks. Then I have my 3 favorite drum keys ready to go at all times. This is my Revolution drum key. It's really cool because it has this little guy that it's like a, it's not a torque. I don't even know what to call it, but basically if you want to loosen it, you just do this, or you can just spin it. So this is a very handy one for just like quickly tightening up everything and loosening it. Basically, if you want to tune this lug down, you just do this. And then if I want to tune it up, I flip it over and I just do this. Whereas with a traditional drum key, you got to spin it all the way around, and that takes a little bit more time out of your thing there. So that is drum key hack number 1. This is one of my favorite drum keys to change heads with and put on new things. This is my favorite drum key. This is the snare weight drum key. Phenomenal. It's got a magnet in it. That's why I have the red tape to let me know that this is the magnet one. It also has this cool rubberized piece that you can sit it on here and it won't move anywhere and it's not going to jiggle and make any noise. But yeah, I just really like the weight of this and I just really like the feel of this and just a beautiful drum key. And then lastly, I have my Evans torque key. And this is how I basically can verify the tuning of where I'm at with a drum and get it to there and or from there and turn it into something new. This is like my main way of gauging where I am with the tension of the drum and where I want to go. So yeah, these are all three of my favorite tools ready to go. Then we have our Drumbrella handle, so you can raise it, lower it. I can sit here and I can be like, all right, let's grab a... And usually if I'm going to try to set the level of this, I'll just kind of like play around with some kick and snare and be like... Sounds good there. So yeah, that's how I control my Drumbrella. Then I like to have a stool sitting here next to me so that I can put my drum keys or headphones if I want to use these or whatever. I just go and have everything always sitting here. This is a pretty typical setup for me in terms of drums. Kick, snare, rack tom, floor tom. Sometimes I'll occasionally use a third tom, but it's pretty consistent in that regard. Left crash, right hi-hat, effect crash. I guess we can start by talking about the kick drum here. I'm using this really cool beater here, which is a Vic Firth beater. It actually just has, it's actually like a really cool, unique thing. People don't like think about it, but you know, you just have this piece of metal with a ball at the end of it and you use that as your beater. So Vic Firth was like, all right, well, let's figure out a way to get the tension correct and like try to actually like redevelop the kick beater. And they made this thing and it just feels spectacular. It's like surprising how great it feels to just play this thing. So yeah, that is the kick beater I've been using a lot recently. Sometimes I like to have a blue microphone on the front head of the kick. So I have a blue ball down there, which I just use to grab a little bit of beater sound. It just gives me a little bit more thwacky, you know, attacky top end that I can boost into there if I really need it. So yeah, that is my kick. I pretty much use a Power Stroke 3 head all the time. If we go down around the other side, we can look at the kick mic here. This is my typical miking setup. I guess I should talk about the fact that I have a kick pillow in here. This is from a guy who runs a company called Kick Pillow, and they're phenomenal pillows. I have them in every single drum. You probably insert a cool shot of all of them here, but basically it's a weighted pillow that has a non-slip surface on the bottom of it and a cool design on top. So I have one of them for every single kick drum here. So I'm currently using a Behringer. This is like I think they're calling this a BA19. Yeah, BA19A. I used to use a 91 and I was shocked how much better this sounded than a 91. I even did a poll on Instagram and the vast majority of everyone chose and said that this was the best sounding one compared to the Beta 91. So I sold my Beta 91 and now I use this guy instead. So this is my kick in mic. Then my kick out microphone is the Telefunken M82 and I just use that right in the hole right there. I also am a big fan of the center port. Don't really like the side ports, really like the center port so that I can just hit straight up on the beater and get all that attack tone. Talking about kick tones and just kick mics in general, I've used every single kick mic that's ever existed. I've had so many love-hate relationships with kick mics over the years. And this combination, these mics, this is the best I can get kicks to sound. BA19, M82, that's my kick sound. And like I said, occasionally a little bit of the blue ball for some beater thwackiness and some uniqueness if I want to add in some distorted, weird blue ball microphone tones. So let's move over to the snare drum and talk about the snare drums here. I am a huge enthusiast of snares. I own, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 snare drums now. This is my new current flavor of the week and best friend. This is the Honest Abe. I think it's called an Odom. This is a 14x8 steel snare drum, and it just sounds fucking incredible. I am a huge fan of anything big and anything heavy, and this is just a phenomenal sounding snare. If you noticed, I have some sticky hands that I'm using on the snare heads. Moon gel, tape, etc., everything, tried it all. This is my sticky hand technique. This is no sticky hand. I like to grab one sticky hand and I lay it down just like that. It's pretty perfect. But then I go even further and I hit it just like that. And now, 14-inch controlled sound, or I mean, if I use my 13-inch snare, it'd be a 13-inch controlled sound. Controlled sound at all times, not controlled sound X. I am not a fan of the emperors or ambassadors or anything else on snares. This is my favorite snare head. This is how I rock all my snares. I also am a very big fan of the 36-inch strand. Let me grab the snare over here and bring it to show you what I mean. But I like my snare wires to be really fucking thick. I like this one. This is my favorite. I got this on every single snare here. Hazy ambassador on every side. Or is this just a regular ambassador? Hazy, whatever. Snare side ambassador. And whatever this pure sound is, the big pure sound one, the big fat one, 36, 40, whatever it is. So yeah, that is my typical go-to snare setup. Then if we talk about mics on the snare drum, I am using a 545. This is a gold 545. Thankfully, I have 4 of them. So if this were to ever break, I have 3 other ones. Like I talked about with kick, love-hate relationship with snare mics. I've tried every single snare mic. You know, if you want to ask me about the Bear, the Audix, the Revox, the Beta, the yada yada, the M80, the Telephone, and I've tried every fucking snare mic. This microphone is my favorite snare mic, Shure 545. I got to thank Jack Joseph Puig for that one because he really reinforced that. However, where I differ with a guy like Jack Joseph Puig is he prefers to point that microphone right at the head, just straight down. I found this snare technique through a producer that I love, Nigel Godrich, and allegedly he likes to point it right over the snare drum. So when I did a bunch of testing, this is the technique that I found that works best. So it's 2 fingers up, literally pointed straight at this side over here, and it's basically almost flat, and you basically start it right off of the head. So it's just right, you got nothing but space here. So the other thing that I really like to do is I make sure that the snare wires are underneath the microphone right here, so that when this microphone is looking at this head, the snare wires are going right here inside of this entire path. So that is my snare setup. I've been messing around with the Earthworks DM20 on snare top as a second top mic to kind of mess around with. It does sound great. I'm not sure if it's something I'm going to really stick with, but we've been making some samples with it and doing some stuff like that, and I think it sounds pretty good, so I've been using it. Then we move to our shell microphone, which is a Reslo ribbon microphone. Shout out to Eric Valentine for telling me to check those out a long time ago. I have 3 of them. They're all really awesome. That is my favorite sounding one for snare shell. That is my snare shell microphone. It's just another nice vintage vibe of a snare to bring in on there. And then what's cool is, like, you know, you get your muted top and like perfect, you know, controlled top sound, and then you just want some of that snare sound. So you raise this shell microphone up and you have more snare sound. Rocks. Then on bottom, we've got my Blue Mouse, one of my absolute favorite microphones on bottom snare. I actually originally bought that because I wanted to use it on bass cab and on kick out, because I had read about Muse using that on one of their records. And so I tried it, used to live there, and then eventually somehow I thought to try it on bottom snare, and it was just fucking phenomenal. Favorite bottom snare mic. I love bottom snare, and I use that mic all the time. In fact, I have a lot of people that'll tell me, man, you got a lot of bottom snare sound in your snare. I think you could turn that bottom snare mic down. And I'm like, no, I could probably turn that up a little bit more because I love that microphone. So that is my snare sound. Then we can go on to toms here. I use ATM 25s on toms. They're the best top head microphone. Again, tried them all, you know, Audix, 421s, etc., etc. ATM 25's favorite, best sounding tom microphone I've ever used. That was a Terry Date inspiration. Heard Terry Date really loved him on toms, so always loved Terry Date drum sounds. And then eventually saw one of his videos where he talked about how he loved them. So yeah, Terry Date, ATM 25s, those are my tom sounds. And recently I have been messing with, again, the Earthworks DM20s as my bottom tom microphones. So I have those mounted to the bottom of these toms here. We did a whole drum sample library recently and tried out every single microphone in existence. You know, we tried the blue mic on bottom tom and et cetera, made sure that this was the best setup, and even tried the DM20s on top, ATM 25s on bottom, ATM 25 on top, DM20 on bottom. That is the best tom sound I've ever gotten, and so that is now my tom sound. Then we move on to hi-hat and ride, and I use 451s for those. These were like the first overhead microphones that I bought when I was younger, and tried to use those as my space pair of overheads. Hated them, never got a great sound out of them, always wanted to sell them, but they always ended up being the best hi-hat and ride microphones that I ever had, so I never sold them because they just sounded phenomenal. A new thing for me that I've been rocking recently is this Lewitt microphone. This is a really cheap microphone, it's $100. But basically I thought to myself, well, if I'm doing two overheads and I got a hi-hat and ride mic, then each cymbal technically has its own mic except for my effect crash. So I decided to get this cheap $100 Lewitt to put on my effect crash here, and it's a phenomenal sounding microphone. I'm afraid to try it on a hi-hat and ride and see if they sound better than these guys, because I don't want to have to sell these ones and buy this one instead. It's just phenomenal. It sounds great. I used it on acoustic guitar the other day, and it was just phenomenal. That'll be my go-to acoustic guitar mic now. It just is a really, really great sounding mic for $100. Incredible. So yeah, those are my cymbal microphones there. Lastly, I have my overheads. These are my RN17s. I mean, I tried every overhead scenario that you could try. Rhodes, Neumann, AKGs, Blue, Soyuz, etc., etc. These are the best sounding overheads I've ever gotten in my life. So my cymbal setup and the way that I kind of typically do this is I rock these 20 inches up from the cymbal, and then I rock it 4 feet away from the snare. So they look kind of a little lopsided, but that's because I want them to have the same distance from the cymbals here. So 4 feet away from the snare, 20 inches up from the cymbals. I try to get these like a good 6 inches away from the spot where people hit. I like to point really like right at the attack. So for example, like whoever I was just recording was hitting here a lot, so that's why the microphone's like right here. The ride, someone was hitting right here a lot, so that's why it's pointed here, not here. You know what I mean? You would think traditionally you'd probably want to put it here, but the guy was hitting over here, so that's why it's over there. Yeah, so this is measured 20 inches away, 4 feet away. I pan that hard left, hard right, hard right, hard right, hard left. And those are my cymbal sounds. This is my close mic drum sound. This is my drums right here. So the other thing to really mention is that like underneath the Drumbrella where we are, it's very controlled. Sounds very, very smooth, very consistent. Altering the height is going to change the decay of these drums, and it's going to change the response of them. So, you know, we play with that obviously until it sounds great. But the second we step outside of this Drumbrella, the ambience and the beauty of the room like really shines and actually like comes into focus. So that's why I have a bunch of room mics that I place out here. So if we go through the other area here, I like to have my U47. This is I bought this microphone hoping to have this be my vocal mic. Loved it on vocals, and then eventually tried it on mono drums and never changed it. Big fan of Brendan O'Brien. Brendan O'Brien's like drum sound is very like roomy, very like lots of mono ambience. Allegedly, one of his tricks is this U47, 4 feet up, 8 feet away from the snare. So this is 8 feet from the snare, 4 feet up. This is where we have the microphone, and we even mark it down here and make sure that it's good to go. And so this is my mono drum sound. This is like one of my most important microphones of my drum sound. I rock this in figure 8 mode because it just has way more low end. It just sounds punchy as fuck. So yeah, then I used to rock a spaced pair of ribbons, but I actually changed it into this XY pair right here. This is a DIY pair of ribbons that I built, and it came with this really cool, like, you know, coupler. But when I would do the panned out, my snare would be heavier on one side, kick would be heavier on one side, the frequency balance wasn't the same. So eventually I put them together, and I just found my stereo image was just like really perfect and just sounded much better and much more controlled. Yeah, then, you know, important to talk about that it's very live sounding here, but we have the space coupler here so that this breaks up any flutter echo. So there's no flutter echo happening inside of this whole portion here. It's very live. So all these microphones are capturing all this really nice ambience here. Another new microphone that I've been messing with. This is our binaural microphone. It's been a dream of mine to have a binaural microphone. I want the Neumann $8,000 microphone at some point in time in my life, but we'll start with the cheaper $700 one instead. So this is Louis. This is my new binaural microphone, and I pretty much use him the way that you might think. I find a place where it sounds good to me, and I put Louis, and I record him and let him be my stereo mic. So he's here right now because when I sat here the other day, the stereo imaging was really great. If I got down here, my tom is right here on my right ear, over here on my left ear. Everything is very nice and symmetrical. The panning is really symmetrical, really nice. And right here, this is where it sounded best. So I put him here and plugged him in, and we got Louis on a stereo ambience here. So that is our stereo microphone. We can talk about my microphone cables. Everything is patched into my custom DIY little patch bay here. We have 24 microphone preamp ins. So you got 16 on top, one preamps 1 through 16 here. Everything is resistor color coded. So we do our brown Roy G Biv code here, and we try to stay very nice and organized with that so that if you see any color, you know which preamp it's going to. So you got 16 on the top. You got the extra 8 on the bottom here. We have 4 speak-on tie lines so that I could bring in an amplifier or a power amp or anything, and then I have 4 extra XLR lines so that I could send any audio I want to and from through there. Next to that, we have our power play distributor here. This is so we can send 16 channels of audio into our headphone controllers right here. We got 4 headphone controllers, so we can have 4 people rocking in here with an independent mix. So drummers have their own mixes. We have, you know, a guitar player standing here and do scratch tracks. That is all ready to go. Let's talk about some, I guess we could talk about, we got sandbags there. We have a couple extra mics. These are my other Reslos ready to go if I want to pull up some extra things. Then, you know, I have my organized mic stand, or mic wall here, mic cable wall, whatever you want to call it. Anyways, I'm very organized in terms of that I like everything to be really consistent with cable numbers. So for example, you might have 4 people come in here and jam. So they might bring in an amplifier, and they might need an IEC power cable to plug into that amplifier. So we got 4 IEC power cables in every single room. I got 3 right here. One of them is being used for this tube microphone power supply here. So we got 3 on the wall. Next to it, you've probably got 4 guitar players who are gonna wanna plug into an amplifier. So guess what? I've got 4 long guitar cables with the right angled connector, so it's nice and clean. So here's my 4 guitar cables ready for them. They might want power, right? Each of those. So I've got 4 extension cables. What do you know? They might want to plug in some pedals. They might want to, try and do a couple other things. So I've got 8 other guitar cables ready to go so that you can plug in any extra things that you want. You might want to plug in a guitar head into a cabinet. Well, I got 4 speaker cables for you to do that with. And then if we want to plug a cab into the wall, because I have those 4 speak-on, I have my 4 speak-on to TS connectors so that I could connect from the wall into a cab or from a guitar head into the wall. And I will show you how we can distribute that signal throughout the entire studio here. So those are those tools. Let's talk about my snare drums that I have in my collection. We talked briefly about my Honest Abe 8-inch snare drum. This is the next snare drum in the collection. This is an Honest Abe 4-inch piccolo. And it looks tiny, but this thing is fucking heavy. It's like 25 pounds. Like I said, that one's like at least 35 pounds. This is at least 25 pounds. Here's a cool logo with our boy, good old Paul Odom, Honest Abe drums, best fucking friends. This snare sounds fucking awesome. If you've ever wanted to get that St. Anger snare tone, this is pretty close to it, to be honest. It just sounds fucking insane. But actually, if you really wanted to get that St. Anger snare tone, well, then you would use this acrylic drum right here that I borrowed from my buddy Mel, because allegedly St. Anger, they used an acrylic snare drum tuned all the way up with no snare strainer. So as you can tell, this is not my snare, because if it was mine, I would have that fat strainer on here. So this is obviously Mel's snare that I'm borrowing, but it's a great sounding snare. And also, it's got the head that I wouldn't use, because I use the controlled sound, you know what I'm saying? So that's a dead giveaway that this is not Sam's snare in this studio here. So next we have the DW Performance snare. This snare fucking rocks. Really fucking good snare. Crazy insane range of tuning. Really low, really high, just phenomenal snare. I think you can get this for like 300 bucks. This is a phenomenal snare. I highly recommend this. Then we have my Ludwig Black Magic. Always been a big fan of the Superphonic and of the Black Beauty. Walked into a snare shop or a drum shop to pick up some drum heads when I was starting a record with a band called Gay Paris. Saw this snare and I said, I'm buying that snare and we're using it on your record. And we did, and it sounds great. And this is a phenomenal snare drum. So I have so many snares that I have to have some of them over here on the side, but I try to keep them all on my shelf over here. So then these are the other snare drums we have. This is a 13-inch Yamaha brass. This is the first snare I ever bought. I thought I was buying a 14-inch, but I mistakenly bought a 13-inch. But it sounds amazing. And this is the sound of the first Story So Far record I did, and of Basement's Color Me and Kindness. This is that fucking snare drum. Here it is. Haven't been using it too much recently, but it rocks. Then this is a Slingerland. This actually used to be a 6-lug, and I had my friend convert it to be a 10-lug. And then we put this old purple wrap on it, and yep, this is my Slingerland snare. This was the famous snare sound on a record called Haze that I did with American Scene. Really good snare sound, really thumpy and awesome. This is a Pearl Export. This is the cheapest snare I own. I bought this for $40, but I bought this because this was Eric Valentine's favorite snare, and the snare that he used for Third Eye Blind and some early Smash Mouth and Queens of the Stone Age. And this snare fucking rocks. Really good snare. Love it. I use it a lot. So yeah, there's that. Then next we have a Pork Pie Bob. It's their Black Beauty. This is probably the second snare drum I ever bought. So first one, second one. Haven't used this snare on too many things that are like notable. it had a big ringing problem, so I used to really like using an Evans dry head on it, and then I changed the rims to die cast, and that kind of helped out quite a bit. Good snare, works better for lower tunings, but yeah, that's that. Then next we have our Concept Maple snare. I got this because, you know, if I had the drum set, I might as well get a snare drum to kind of match with it. Important noting that the drum set, I guess I should have mentioned this earlier, but the drum set came with wood hoops, but I actually converted to the whole thing to triple flange hoops because I think it tunes much better and it sounds much better and it's way more flexible. So this is the original wood hoop, and I left it that way because I don't have a snare that's like that. So this is a cool vibey thing, cooler for like more like soft stuff and like slower jams and like lower tune stuff. But yeah, there's that. Then we got the PDP. This is the Bruno Mars drummer, and it has the Panda on it because I guess his nickname is Panda or whatever. But this snare rocks, man. This is how you get that New Jack Swing fucking sound. This is my first piccolo that I owned. Really fucking awesome snare. Super fun vibe. If you've ever listened to that New Jack Swing stuff, you know what I'm talking about. Great song, or great snare sound. And then here is the bell brass snare. It is getting very dirty and looking very worn. This is probably our most used snare drum. This is like a very, very, very heavy snare drum. This is a snare drum that I had custom ordered from the same company that made the Tama bell brass snare drums. So this is basically a Tama bell brass build. The only thing different is instead of the weird rolled hoops that they would do, I have the die cast hoops, but they are also cast bronze. So this entire snare drum, including the hoops, is cast bronze. The only thing that is not are the throw off and the lug locks here, or the tube lugs there. So those are my snare drums. We got one other snare drum in the other room that I'll show you. You all know what snare drum that is, but we'll get to that shortly. Then let's talk about my shelf and everything that I have in here. I got all my percussion, anything you would want to do percussion-wise. Like, I got this fucking, look at this thing. No big deal. Do you know anyone who has something that fucking big? So, you know, random harmonicas, lots of Cymbals. This is by far the coolest percussion item. This is a one-shot. Actually, the dude Chris from Saves the Day told me to get one of these. He told me this was like the coolest percussion, and he's right. This is the coolest percussion. It has no recoil, so it only gets only one shot. So sick. So then, you know, if you grab two of them, then you can do this type of move. You could be like, whereas a traditional shaker, you know, it does this whole thing. It's got the recoil. You can't do one, but with the one shot, just one. One of my favorite percussion tricks. So yeah, that's the box percussion. Whenever it's time to do a bunch of percussion, we break that out. Then I got all of my mic little bags here, very neatly organized. You might notice that all my mics are on stands. I like to use my mics and I like them ready to go. So I try to leave everything set up all the time instead of just have my mics put away all the time and have to build my sessions every day. That's for people who run recording studios. This is a production facility and we are making music and records every day. So everything is always ready to go. Underneath that, I got my two extra 545s. Like I said, the gold 545s. You know what I'm saying, partner? You know. Yeah, anyways, there they are. Then I have one extra DM20 from Earthworks. These mics are pretty great sounding. Yeah, then after that, all my microphone accessories, any extra cables. These are some ribbon boosters if you need to make your ribbons a little louder or something like that. I like to use those with the Reslos sometimes. Then all my other microphone accessories, you know, windscreens and stereo bars and anything you would need for mic accessories ready to go. Then I got some pop filters up here ready to go. You can put one on a mic stand if you want to do it that way. This one's one of my favorite ones to use. I hate clipping a pop filter onto the same stand as a microphone. I just hate it. I'd rather use a different stand and do that. So that's that. Then underneath that, I got some extra windscreens for my SM7 and all of these little nice little cases that I could put my sensitive mics in. Anything that is going to make my microphones, you know, very beautiful. Then after that, I got all my drum accessories. I'm very organized in terms of extra drum keys, extra drum lugs, extra bass drum lugs, all the little foams that you would need for your cymbals. Then I got, you know, extra wing nuts if you need those. If your hi-hat needs another clutch or you want to switch out between a couple hi-hats real quick, you can have them ready to go with this guy. So got those ready to go. Then over here are my other two favorite drawers. This is my lug lock drawer where I got my lug locks ready to go. Got cotton balls for when you need to change those heads. That's just a good trick. Put a couple cotton balls inside of the drum so that it deadens your bottom head. So they bounce up and they pop back down and help deaden that sound. These are some more rock locks here. Then I got, you know, some bass drum pads and some snare strainer stuff. All your drum stuff. This is also a thing that I love. The drum dial conditioning edge. If you're gonna put a new head on, like put this on your bearing edge. It's so good. It's like chapstick. It smells good too, by the way. Teresa, my assistant, always says that she wants this as her chapstick. It smells great. So yeah, there is that. And then lastly, the fun drawer, the sticky hand. So if you ever need to mute a drum, just walk over to the sticky hand drawer, grab a sticky hand and do it up. And or if you want to be, you know, an immature person and hit your friends with a sticky hand like I'm about to do to Mel, and you can be like, what's up? Let's see if I can get that camera. Oh yeah, you know what I'm saying? Woo! All right, anyways. Then on top of that, I have some mallets, in case you need to use some mallet stuff. Really nice when you're tuning drums. Then I have my very cool case full of some extra drum keys and all my snare weights and muting things that you would want. Then here are all my different beaters, because we like to change beater sounds for everything. You know, sometimes you want to use a wood beater, sometimes you want to use a nice felt, sometimes you want to use a little, you know, a little fucking tennis ball. So that's pretty cool. And then this one's also pretty cool, the poofy one. What's up? They also have different sound, different vibe. So there's all the beaters there. Then here are all the used drumsticks. So if you forget a drumstick, don't worry, pretty much got you. You're good to go. Just reach into the used drumstick pile. An extra kick pillow in case anyone needs it for the kick drum, ready to go. This is the infamous kick pad, thanks to old Jason Sukoff. Let's say that you're a drummer who is doing a bunch of double kick, then we'll pretty much replace your kick drum and use this old tennis ball guy, and this will be your kick drum sound instead. That way we can make it all quiet in the room and replace that kick trigger with a nice sample and avoid any flams and any issues. So we've got that ready to go in case we have those sessions. Then I have a speaker here. This is actually a Gibson Gold Tone speaker, and I use this to lay on top of snare drums to reamp snare drum sounds with. So I got my special out and I plug it into my power amp and I'll run my signal to my snare and I will reamp a snare with this. So that's always ready to go. Then bottom shelf, I got some kick pedals so that you can swap between some double kick pedals. I got a DW, I got a Iron Cobra double kick, and then I got a couple extra drumsticks. Those ones are ones that have been thwacked by a snare pretty hard, but hey, you know, if you got a match and you got to make it fine, you got your pick down there. So that basically covers the West live room.